this commission concerning an item on tonight's agenda, please pick up a blue card at the door, write your name, address, and the agenda number that you wish to comment on, and give it to Mark Shipley. Please review the public participation guidelines provided on the agenda, which is provided on the table as you entered the meeting room. During the discussion of each agenda item, the chairman will ask town staff for Farragut residents' input. Farragut residents who have signed up to speak on that specific agenda item may do so for up to 3 minutes. After being recognized by the chairman, please proceed to the podium microphone to be heard. Please limit your comments to the specific agenda item being discussed. There is time reserved at the end of the business meeting for residents' comments on non-agenda subjects, which also requires that you fill out a blue comment card. Please include your name, address, and topic of your comments. You will have 3 minutes to speak on your topic. We ask that persons speaking avoid using improper language or profanity. Please remember we are here tonight doing the people's business. It is a very important responsibility for all of us. Now I ask that if you are able, please stand for a moment of silence for prayer and reflection, to be followed by the recital of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry, I appreciate it. Thank you. The first thing on the agenda is the election of officers. I'm suggesting that we present an entire slate and a motion for all of them to be voted at the same time. So go ahead.
So moved.
All right, I'm going to move that chairman is Ron Pinchak, vice chair Jeff Devlin, and secretary is Shannon Preston. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any conversation? Anybody else want to sign up for any of this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, the next thing on the agenda is the approval of agenda. We have amendments to the agenda. One is to postpone agenda item 4D and move agenda 4F to discussion, no, I'm sorry, approve 4F for discussion only, not for, we will not be voting on that tonight. There's some issues. Our attorney would like to make sure that we are following proper procedures and statutory provisions regarding requirements for the major road plan and subdivision regulations. Regardless, we have several people who have shown up to discuss this, so we should have this community conversation. We just won't be voting on this tonight. Do I have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I apologize. All right. Next thing on the agenda is approval of minutes.
Motion to approve.
Any amendments?
No, sir.
All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
One
Motion-
abstain.
Motion passes. All right, we have 7 action items, I think, if I count right. First one, 4A, discussion and public hearing on approval of a variance from the requirement in the subdivision regulations for the construction of a pedestrian facility associated with a re-subdivision plat to combine parcels 070071 and FA001, tax map 151, 2.36 acres, 3 lots, Zone C1, Pinnacle Land Surveying Incorporated is the applicant.
Yes, and this item will need action separately on the variance request and then the plat itself. This particular plat, let me pull it up here, is just to the west of the fast-paced urgent care, relatively new facility out in western part of Kingston Pike. It's in the address range of 13021 through 13045 Kingston Pike. There's 3 tracks there that they're combining. It's all owned by the same person for the purpose of future development. This plat has a cross-access easement that ties into accesses both to the east and the west, which is what we require. And they also have the access easement coming out to Kingston Pike across from where the Dollar General Advance Auto access is on the south side of Kingston Pike. So with this particular plat, as required in our subdivision regulations, you know, Kingston Pike's a major arterial street, and anytime you subdivide along an arterial, you're required to construct a pedestrian facility along the frontage. The applicant is requesting a variance from that subdivision regulation requirement and to have that pedestrian facility constructed as part of the site plan process and the site development, which makes sense from the staff's perspective, because then you know where everything is going to go and you can tie it in better. We've done that with a number of other tracks that didn't have development plans at that point, and were being subdivided to create that possibility in the future. So the staff does recommend approval of the requested variance with the understanding and with a plat note added that the pedestrian facility will be constructed along the Kingston Pike frontage of what is now, would now be Lot 1 when the site is developed as part of the site development process. So that's the first thing that we need your all's action on.
So move.
Second.
Do we have any public input on that?
No, ma'am.
Any discussion?
Done.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Moving on to the plat.
Okay, the plat, staff is recommending approval of that, subject to obtaining the signatures, and then adding a note that reflects the action taken tonight regarding the variance, so that the plat, there's an understanding, and it's on part of the plat, that that facility will be built when the site is developed. So with those two subject tos, the staff recommends approval of the plat.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any public input?
No, ma'am.
Any discussion?
Yes. The owner is aware of what we're doing here?
Yes.
I don't see
Yes, sir.
anybody. You're here?
Yeah, Jeff.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't know that, he doesn't want. Do you need him to come up?
Well, as long as he understands it, that's all that matters.
Do you understand what we're doing?
Okay.
Any more discussion? All right, with discussion closed, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 4B, discussion and public hearing on approval to extend fiber optic cable and a new 2-inch conduit within the right-of-way beginning at the northeast intersection of Kingston Pike and North Campbell Station Road and extending along the east side of North Campbell Station Road, and then boring under North Campbell Station Road to the west side of North Campbell Station Road to Jamestown Boulevard, and then along the south side of Jamestown Boulevard to service the property at 11507 Kingston Pike. Comcast applicant.
Now, that is a long caption for that item, so, and that pretty much describes what they're doing. Basically, Comcast is, through Source Broadband will be their installer, which we do have a letter of credit with that particular contractor. They're basically extending about 1,900 linear feet of half-inch fiber cable along. It will start at the northwest intersection of Kingston Pike and North Campbell Station Road and go along the east side of North Campbell Station Road down to pretty close to where the Rural Metro facility is, and it'll cross under North Campbell Station Road and go on the west side up to Jamestown Boulevard and be on the south side of Jamestown Boulevard and come in from the north into the Village Green Shopping Center to service that 11507 Kingston Pike at this time. So the staff recommends approval of this project subject to obtaining a right-of-way permit through the town's engineering department. And I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Move to approve the item with the subject twos.
Do I have a second? Second. Any public input?
No.
Any discussion?
Yes. Mark, have we used this source broadband before
Yes, we have.
with good results?
As far as I know, we've had good results with them.
Okay.
Like I said, we have I think it's a $30,000 letter of credit, and that's, any of these installers have to provide that before they can get a right-of-way permit, and that gives us the assurance that any areas that might be affected by their project get properly restored.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Is that the complete discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item 4C, discussion and public hearing on the approval to extend fiber optic cable from the west end of Boyd Station Road along the east side of McPhee Road to the entrance to the Grove at Boyd Station subdivision. Charter applicant.
This particular project is, will start on the kind of the northeast intersection of Boyd Station Road and McPhee. It'll come in on the north side of Boyd Station Road, and then all this is in the right-of-way along the east side of McPhee Road, all the way up to the entrance to the Grove at Boyd Station subdivision. It's about 2,200 linear feet of fiber optic cable. This would be for Charter, and they are using Mostec as their installer, which we also have a letter of credit with them. All this work will be conducted through directional boring. So the staff recommends approval of this project subject to obtaining the right-of-way permit through the town's engineering department.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any public input? No. Any discussion?
None.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, moving on to,
D's guns.
no, yeah, E. D was
E.
4E, discussion and public hearing on approval to extend 4-inch gas main along the north side of Allen Kirby Road and extend a 2-inch gas main along Allen Kirby Road to service 12960 Allen Kirby Road, KUB applicant.
Project is about 2,400 linear feet. And what it involves is this will be conducted entirely by KUB. And they're going to start at McPhee Road, kind of the north side, northwest intersection of McPhee and Allen Kirby Road. And then they'll be going west along the north side of Allen Kirby Road for about, like I said, 2,400 linear feet, and then boring under Allen Kirby Road with a 100-foot bore of 2-inch gas main at that point to service currently the property at 12960 Allen Kirby Road. As I mentioned earlier, this is entirely going to be conducted by KUB. They are aware that they will have to coordinate all this work with the Colonial Pipeline group because the gas line that they're installing is just outside of Colonial Pipeline's 30-foot easement. So I'm sure those two entities work together quite a bit, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. So the staff recommends approval of this project subject to obtaining a right-of-way permit through the town's engineering department.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any public input?
No.
Any discussion?
None.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The following item we have changed for discussion only. Discussion on a request for approval of a resolution to amend the major road plan to provide for context-sensitive street cross-sections for selected collector and arterial streets. And I'm wondering, Mark, should we handle this like we did the last time? We do it a road at a time. I know that there's some people here for certain sections, so.
Yeah, it's up to you all. I was going to give a little background on how we decided which streets to use, and then what really are the objectives we're trying to accomplish. We talked about this at the April Planning Commission meeting, and I discussed the fact that these streets that we're looking at were selected because they're either substandard or they're incomplete. In other words, they don't provide for all users of the transportation system. And that these streets, other than Boyd Station Road, they aren't part of any active, ongoing project that's in our CIP. So, again, I explained that the intent of what we're trying to do is, through this resolution, would be to guide a developer or the town, if we had a CIP project, on what improvements might be expected along these different streets should they ever be developed. We're not proposing to develop anything tonight, and that's not part of what this resolution is about. Basically, these cross-sections, if they are adopted ultimately, they would replace the requirements that are currently in our subdivision regulations, and I'll kind of show you what that would look like. So some of the goals, the specific.
There's a lot of confusion. This is, as you can imagine, what are our subdivision regulations? Not a detailed thing, but tell the folks, we just need to know what our.
I'll go over that in detail for the different roads.
Okay, no, in general, what are subdivision regulations? They're what we used.
Subdivision regulations are kind of the requirements that we have in place for mostly the public infrastructure that may occur in the town. Like if you're, what kind of street do we want? How wide does it need to be? Does it need to have curb and gutter, open ditch drainage, utilities, all those kinds of things, are part of your pedestrian facilities, your open space, how lots are created, all that stuff is handled in our subdivision regulations. So if somebody does a project either on an existing public street or they develop a subdivision, they have to submit what's called a preliminary plat and the requirements of that are in our subdivision regulations. And that's basically construction plans for developing or modifying the public streets, the trails, the sidewalks, utilities, the drainage, all that kind of stuff. So subdivision regulations is also an entirely planning commission matter.
And it's required by state law.
It's required by state law.
That we have an adopted set of subdivision regulations. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd like to make a comment. So in other words, for each of these proposed guidance diagrams that we have here, there are already regulations on the books that prescribe how to do it. Okay?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep. So some of the goals, and we talked about this again in April, and these are consistent with the town's comprehensive land use plan and our strategic plan. One thing is providing for complete streets that are not just for motorists, they also accommodate other users. That's an important aspect of our community. It's what makes us marketable. It's one of the most valued amenities that we have in the community. So that's something that we are trying to achieve. Functionality, looking at these streets, the cross sections that we'll go over, instead of having a pedestrian facility on both sides of the road, as would be required in our subdivision regulations, we looked at, all right, let's just have a facility in most of these, other than Campbell Station Road, on one side of the road, and let's make it a wider facility, because A shared use path is something that is more multifunctional. You know, if you have baby strollers, recreational bicyclists, things like that, you know, a shared use path is more functional than a 5-foot sidewalk. So functionality is an important item of this. And then probably the most important thing is looking at the context of the setting. Most of these roads are in a fairly rural location. So what we did, instead of saying, well, if something happened on these roads, they'd just be held to the requirements in the subdivision regulations. And I can show you what that would look like on one of the streets. We said, let's look at this. Let's try not to destroy the rural character of these streets, but still kind of address the other strategies to some extent. It's kind of a hybrid. And so what we looked at here is most of these streets are not wider than 11-foot lanes, and they have open ditch drainage, no curb and gutter on what we're talking about. And then they would have space between a shared use path and the edge of street for street trees, or to kind of keep, you know, a tree aligned, you know, corridor through these sections. And then finally, lowering cost. This would lower development cost, maintenance cost, because you wouldn't have as wide of facilities, wouldn't have as many facilities, and it would be far less impactful on the property owners that are have properties along these particular streets. So, so that's some of the broader objectives. I'm just going to kind of go through these streets again real quickly to show you. Let me see here. What we're looking at. So the first one, and I do have some people obviously that signed up for this we want to hear from, but the first street we're looking at is Allen Kirby Road. And there's about a mile of Allen Kirby Road that's unimproved, and it's really substandard. If anybody's ever been on it, it's barely wider than a walking trail, frankly. So you're starting out, we're starting over in Loudoun County looking east on Allen Kirby Road. That's what's in the upper image. So the current condition out there is about a 14-foot street, open ditch drainage on both sides. So what the proposed cross-section would be is consistent with what the Bridgemore concept plan has for their portion of the Allen Kirby Road frontage, which is about 3,900 linear feet of the unimproved section. So that's what that would entail. We'd retain the open ditch drainage on the south and north side of the road. There would be really no activity happening on the south side of Allen Kirby Road. It would all be on the north side, which is where Bridgemore has their existing walking trail, for example, further on the east end of Allen Kirby Road. So that would be kind of extended on over to the end of Allen Kirby Road, and that's kind of what's shown on the lower image. So I can just tell you this, that if you're looking at that lower image, if you went by the regular, what you're looking at there in lieu of what's on the bottom is two 12-foot lanes instead of 11-foot lanes, curb and gutter on both sides of the road, no open ditch drainage, and then you would have a pedestrian facility also on both sides of the road, not just on one side.
You have that exhibit in here somewhere.
I have it for Evans, yeah.
You don't have, I know it, we had Exhibit B, you don't have this in
I do.
your deck?
It's a later slide, but.
Understood. I have it in front of me, but I would love for the folks to be able
Yeah,
to
let me
see it,
see.
because there's a big difference between what we're trying to do for Allen Kirby and what current subdivision regulations require. It's quite an extensive over-design, and that's what we're trying to get away from is
58. One more. Okay. So, yeah, what Louise was talking about, Allen Kirby Road, Evans, Boyd Station, all those are what's called a major collector, a major road plan. And in the subdivision regulations, all these street classifications are laid out as to what the expectations are. And that's what you would have built without adopting context-sensitive cross-sections like we're recommending in this resolution. So as I mentioned earlier, in the case of those type roads, you'd have two 12-foot lanes, curb and gutter, the grass strips, you'd have the walking trail on one side and a sidewalk on the other side.
And that's what McPhee Road is right now and Everett Road is.
Fee and Everett, yes.
So in the subdivision regulations, if we don't move from what we've got, what we're looking at here, we would see McPhee Road standards on Evans Road and McPhee Road standards on Allen Kirby. I'm just trying to draw a picture for you guys. What we're trying to do is reduce this and preserve as much of the character of these thoroughfares and not do McPhee and Old Stage and Everett Road again. We don't need to do that anymore. We know they're too fast. We know they're over-designed. We know it makes for a very soulless area that is great for cars to drive really, really fast and for people to feel unsafe when they're walking on those trails and those sidewalks. So there's got to be a balance to find a road that's safer but still preserves as much of the character of that corridor, because that's what we treasure about Farragut, is beautiful thoroughfares. I think we did a great job with Virtue Road. That came about from all of this. Union Road isn't done yet, but Union Road was supposed to be that. Union Road was supposed to be Everett Road. And we worked very hard to lower the design speed, lower the lane width. No one ever saw the Everett Road, Union Road as Everett Road, because we worked hard to not see that. But that's what we're doing here, is we're trying to reduce and still have safe roads, because it is our requirement as a town to have safe roads for the traveling public, but also acknowledge that we have residents who live on these roads, and we don't want to create ridiculously fast roads, so.
And I'd like to reiterate that this resolution does not initiate any changes, physical changes whatsoever. That has to go through a process of
That goes through.
budget approvals and
This is intended to be
This is just setting up a different guideline.
a different jumping off point from which you develop a preliminary plan, and then you bring the public in and everybody gets to take a look, and we can kind of pinch here or redo something here. That's kind of how the process has worked in the last several years.
Okay. The second road we're looking at was Boring Road. Obviously, Boring Road is undergoing a lot of change right now with the school and with the new subdivision out there. And this could also be changed too if they end up closing the south end of it. So these are cross sections that, again, looking at, if you started at the east end of Boring, southeast, Old Ingalls Shopping Center going north. Basically, currently you have about a 16-foot wide street, and what would be proposed there in lieu of what we looked at earlier with what would be required in the subdivision regulations is two 10-foot lanes with a pedestrian facility on the school's property on the west side of Boring Road. So as you continue along Boring Road, you continue that on through the curve. And then this is the section on the lower part that the school would be constructing up to their portion of Boring Road. And what they're trying to do there, although we recommended a lesser lane width than what they're probably going to do, they're trying to match the improvement that was made to Boring Road from Smith all the way across the frontage of Baldwin Park subdivision when that was rezoned and developed. And that's two 12-foot lanes with curb and gutter and a pedestrian facility on both sides, pretty similar to what would be required otherwise for that street. So again, we took this back to the Planning Commission and asked the county if they did make changes to maybe reduce that lane width to 11, instead of two 12-foot lanes, have two 11-foot lanes. So that's what that particular section is showing. The next road, as I mentioned earlier, is part of an existing capital investment program project, and that's Boyd Station Road. That's a long, straight road that we are going to be introducing a roundabout on that road at the entrance to the Grove subdivision that they'll have on Boyd Station Road. Currently, that road is two 10-foot lanes. There's going to be a shoulder added to that, and a curb and gutter on one side, the non-railroad side. Basically, everything's happening on the north side of this road because the south end is the railroad right-of-way. And that curb and gutter is really just to direct the flow of water. It's not going to be tied into any storm sewer system because it's so flat through there. We couldn't really do an open drainage, unfortunately, because that would have lessened a little bit of the concrete through that cross-section. And then there'd be a walking trail on the north side of Boyd Station Road, and the Grove at Boyd Station subdivision would be building most of that as part of their development. Then we get to Evans Road. Evans is about a 4,200 linear foot road. Has about 1,800 trips per day on it with the latest count I had at least. So currently, if you're starting in the west part of Evans Road over at the cottages at Price Farms and you're looking east, you've got a road that's about 18 feet wide, two 9-foot lanes, has open ditch drainage. So what we're looking at there is two 10-foot lanes, not substantially wider, retaining the open ditch drainage, no curb and gutter, and then having the pedestrian facility tie into the cottages at Price Farms and extend on to the east on the south side of Evans Road and cross over to tie into the pedestrian facility that was constructed as part of the farm at Willow Creek subdivision several years ago. So one of the things on this one, and again, we're just continuing on here, going to east and continuing that cross-section. But this here is a good example on Evans, is kind of a side-by-side comparison of what is being recommended with this different approach to the street cross-sections, more context appropriate, which would be what we're recommending with this resolution on the top image, versus what would be required if somebody did develop along Evans Road right now without adopting these modifications. So the lower image is what you would get if we don't make changes that are context sensitive. And I think you can tell that that's a pretty substantial difference and a pretty substantial increase in the impact to the people that live along that particular corridor. So again, like we said, we're trying to look at some of the things that have been done in the past and maybe not do that again, and try to incorporate streets that are better and maybe a little safer, but don't over-engineer them and make them to where you kind of invite people to drive faster than they maybe should. And you're still providing for a more complete street, although you're not requiring a pedestrian facility on both sides of the street. So it's kind of a hybrid with what's required and what you have now that is kind of in between. So that's a good example of Evans Road. Again, what this would recommend on top, and then what you may have otherwise if it were developed under the current regulations on the bottom. The next road is Heron Road. And this one's about 1,700 feet that's unimproved. And the reason this road was kind of identified is we're not proposing any changes to the width of the road, just trying to incorporate maybe a sidewalk or a trail on the east side of the road at some point. And because you got Founder's Park on one end of Heron Road, you know, crossing over to obviously the road. And then you've got the Turkey Creek development and a walking trail that comes in to Heron Road at the very north end of Heron Road. So trying to
Mark, that's
incorporate,
also in the parent responsibility zone
Yes,
for
it would
primary
be.
school.
because if you're trying to, you know, I've tried running on Heron Road when I used to run on the roads, and it's not a pleasant experience. I mean, there's, you know, it's fairly narrow, and, you know, you just can't feel comfortable. So I think that would be a good amenity to, you know, connect those two developments, I guess, the Founder's Park and Turkey Creek, and give people other options, you know, to get to and from those different endpoints. Again, this one is not proposing any changes to the street width. I can tell you on a local collector like Heron Road, our current subdivision regulations would require two 13-foot lanes with extruded curb and a pedestrian facility on both sides of the road. So it's a pretty substantial difference between what is being recommended here. So you're going from two 9-foot lanes to two 13-foot lanes in the subdivision regulations. The only arterial road on these cross sections is a portion of North Campbell Station Road, and this is actually north of the interstate, north of the Overlook Apartments as you go toward the end of the town limits there at Ridgeland subdivision. So this one does have more of an impact because it does have about 9,000 average daily trips. So it's much, you know, has a lot more traffic than the other streets that we looked at. So we do show pedestrian facilities on both sides here, although on the north side, that's going to be in the county, and, you know, they may or may not ever have a pedestrian facility on their side of North Campbell Station Road. We've kind of started a facility on our side with the mini warehouse project. There's a walking trail that extends to the end of their property. And as those properties on the south side of North Campbell Station Road are developed over time, we would extend that trail all the way down to Fretz Road and tie into that part of the town. So that's what is proposed for North Campbell Station Road. And again, that's a minor arterial. The other streets we looked at are collectors. And then the last one is a local collector. That's Red Mill Lane. And Red Mill Lane, it has a fairly high traffic count, about 1,250 from the latest count I have. It's about 2,600 linear feet. The lane width is 12 feet per lane. We're not proposing to change that. We're looking at maybe at some point there might be a sidewalk or trail on the east side of Red Mill Lane because there you've got Turkey Creek Road, you got Anchor Park, and, you know, that has a sidewalk along Turkey Creek Road. And then if the Biddle property were ever to develop to the north and there be a connection to Red Mill Lane, having a pedestrian facility to connect that ultimately down to the sidewalk along Turkey Creek Road and Anchor Park would be a good amenity. So that's the only change with that particular road. I could tell you again on this one, if you went by the subdivision regulations, you'd be looking at two 13-foot lanes, curb and gutter, and a pedestrian facility on both sides of the road. So again, we're just trying to not over-engineer these roads, try to, as much as we can, retain the rural character. So these next three cross-sections are going to be kind of a rehash of a lot of the things we've talked about. The minor collector, this is what's required right now in the subdivision regulations for streets like Heron Road, Red Mill Lane. If they were to develop, this is kind of what you'd be looking at. The major collector, that is one that we just looked at in relation to Evans. So you've got 4 streets that fall under that are part of this resolution. That's Allen Kirby Road, Boring Road, Evans, and Boyd Station Road. So that's what you would get right there with the current subdivision regulations, is that type of cross-section. And then finally, the minor arterial that we have that I just mentioned, which is North Campbell Station Road, that's what would be required for that particular road. A little bit wider lane widths than what we're recommending in this particular resolution. So that is kind of a summary of what this is about. Again, this is a discussion item only this evening. And I do have some people that have signed up. If any of y'all have any questions of me before that, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
I do want one piece of clarity. I know that there's concern that this is, these cross-sections are presented as a jumping off point. They are not set in stone like we're going to have, some of these that we have a shared use path, that's the goal. We may end up with a sidewalk. We
Yeah,
may end up with a
absolutely.
sidewalk like
Yeah.
Heron Road. We may end up with sidewalk back a curb. If there's, trees and there's things that make it difficult for us. That's all part of a discussion. When a preliminary plan comes out, we have community discussion. But these cross-sections are intended to be a jumping off point to start a preliminary plan so that we can bring the community in and work on. That's kind of how we've been working it lately.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. This would be the cross-section, the typical. That doesn't mean you can't make some adjustments to it, but it does mean that you're looking at the context and you're not just going by the strict requirements in the subdivision regulations. So your starting point is a much less impactful cross-section than what you would otherwise have. And then you could still make tweaks to that, working with the property owners on these different roads. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, the town, we've grown by 20,000 people since our incorporation. And these streets are probably someday going to be improved, whether we like it or not. And so we're just trying to say what makes sense, what doesn't really kind of create a very non-rural cross-section, and still kind of accomplish some of the core objectives that makes the town, a marketable and a desirable place to live. And so I think that's a good point. I mean, we can always make adjustments to that.
I think we're ready to hear from the public.
Okay.
Did you want to, I don't know if you've organized them in any particular way, or do you want to even bother, try to? And last time, we grouped all the Kirby Road people together and all that. I don't know if that's.
The only ones that spoke are all about Evans.
Okay, so
That have signed up to speak. So the first one is Tim Neal, and after Tim is Rick Comastek. Is that right? And the clock is not working, so I just ask that you try to keep it to 3 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you. My name is Tim Neal. I live at 12600 Evans Road. I don't want to jump out in front of your comments, Mark, about this is proposals and it's not carved in stone yet. That's understood. My concern, number one, being here tonight, I just found out about this possibility last night. No notice that I'm aware of was ever sent out to the residents on Evans Road. So the proposal that's being thrown out here is totally new to me. Was there any notice sent out?
Well, we didn't send out any notice because we're not proposing anything specific. This is just, an alternate to the subdivision regulations. It's not, we're not proposing any immediate action
But
on
this
these
is the second
roads.
public discussion we've had.
We had a,
So we missed I missed the first one because I wasn't aware, so that's
Yeah.
a concern. There's very few residents that actually, other than the farm at Willow Creek, other than that, there's very few residents that we wouldn't be hard to contact. And so, I understand your connectivity of the walking trails and this, that, and the other. The part of me wants to say that's all well and good, and part of me wants to say widening Evans Road, maybe the narrowness of Evans Road prevents the speeding as much as making it wider might make it easier to speed. But nevertheless, that's neither here nor now. My concern is I want to be involved in the future as this proceeds. It certainly impacts my property. If you go to our side of the road, you're going to be affecting the entrance to my property, my fencing, my columns, the trees. You're making a serious impact on me personally. And I think that's what you'll hear from everybody else. So I'll reserve any future comments just to the standpoint that I want more openness, or I want to be notified if there's more discussion of where this is going to go.
I would definitely watch for future agendas, because at some point that we'll be voting on this. It may be August, September, probably in the next couple of
At
months.
some point in time, I'm going to object, and I'm going to have a lot of things to say. At this point in time, it's preliminary for me to say that, so that's where I'm at the moment.
Tim, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Is any of these things that you said that's your columns, your trees or whatever, fence, is that in the right of way?
I don't think it is.
Okay.
I can't say that for a fact, but it shouldn't be.
Okay. You're a builder, so you're
Yes.
very aware of what right of ways are.
Yeah,
So,
I know
okay.
what you're talking about. I
Okay.
don't have those details, but I'm pretty sure I'm not.
Okay, I would watch for that as
Yeah.
well. Okay.
All right? Thank you.
Guess I'm next. I'm Rick Komistek. My wife and I, we live at 12540 Evans Road, and I first just want to thank all of you for the service you're doing to the city. I've served on a lot of boards, and this is much, much probably more intense serving on Farragut, and I just want to thank you for your time. I too just found out about this last night, and Mark, you talked about character, and I think, as we grow as Farragut, we also don't want to lose the character of some of these streets. Evans Road, if you've driven up there, has a lot of character. It's got a lot of old trees. I've been told some of the trees are over 100 years old. We start cutting those trees down and we start planting new trees, we've lost a lot of history, okay? It's a great road. You got the Confederate Cemetery there. I don't think every road in the city needs to be widened. As Ken said, I want to thank Mark because, I contacted him. Scott, I want to thank Scott because I contacted him a couple years ago about putting a street sign on there because people were speeding all the time. I would come out of my road and cars were going 70 miles an hour on Evans Road. Scott, this has helped a lot. But you start widening that road and we're on the top, okay? We don't have a lot of visual of cars coming up that hill. This thing widens. It's going to be terrible for us and our kids and one day grandkids. If our kids get married and have grandkids, we don't want to see people start driving faster. We want to maintain the character. If you start going wider to our area, just like Ken, and we are on our property, we've got 2 brick pillars on our property, but pretty close to where you're going to be going. We can't find that brick anymore. So when something like this happens, will you re-brick our house? Because my wife is not going to go for a different type of brick on our pillars at our gate compared to the house. And so I really want you to really think about that and think about the fact that, again, we just found out about this last night, didn't know anything about it. Thankfully, Scott gave me some information about it, but let's keep some character in Farragut. Farragut needs to have some history. And if we just start demolishing everything and modernizing everything, we're going to lose some of the character that Farragut's had. Please drive up Evans Road and you'll see there's a lot of character there at Evans Road. Well said. Any questions for me at all from anybody?
That's the point of this.
Okay, thank you.
That's the point of what we're trying.
Yeah, I think I also have a comment. we're not interested in taking down 100-year-old trees and messing with a Confederate cemetery or your pillars, right? Like, that's not what this is about. It's about having a plan for the future that's reasonable and actually puts the roads in better shape than the current
And
requirements
I agree
are
with
for
making
them.
them better roads, but let's not promote it to where we've advanced it to create problems. I don't want to see somebody get killed on Evans Road. There's a lot of bikers on Evans Road. If they're coming up that hill and the road's wider, you're going to see young people trying to pass them going up the hill. I just don't want to see an accident one day. And I think Evans Road has great character right now. Not every road, I think, in Farragut needs to be widened. Thank you.
Okay, and the last speaker was the Price family. Do you want to say anything?
Hi, I'm Tegwin, and this is my family here, my mother, Mary Price. We've been there for 60 years. I was 9 years old when we first bought that property. We can't hear you. You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay, all right. Okay, I'm not good at this. I'm not a speaker. But anyway, I just wanted y'all to be aware that we've been there. Our house is over 100 years old, and it is, you know, an icon. We are the Prices. We sold part of our property and built, you know, they all built all that stuff down there. But I have horses, and I have a cow, and I have 5 goats. And a walking trail would not be good. It'd be detrimental to my horses, and it's a huge liability. So I just want y'all to think about that. I'm not opposed to a sidewalk on the other side of the road, but I don't want people walking next to my horses. And that woman right there, she is the legacy. And stand up, Mama. Yes, easier said than done. But she is. Yeah, she is the cause of all of our horses, and we've had show horses all through the years, and I don't plan on them going anywhere, and we're not going anywhere either. And a walking trail in my front yard, walking out my front door, and there'd be a walking trail, because that's the way I measured it, it's gonna be awful. That's ridiculous. And there's a big tree that's been there for over 100 years. All the trees in our front yard are very old. And, you know, it's just, it's heartbreaking. And, you know, I've watched this town grow since a little girl. And I used to ride my pony all the way around the block and never see a car. I used to ride my go-kart up and down Evans, never see a car. So it's been hard for me to see this happening. And to have my front yard destroyed, that's just gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt us all. But thank you for listening. Any questions? No? Okay.
So that's all we've had sign up for this item.
All right, is there any other discussion from the commission?
Louise, I've got a question, either for you or for Mark. The town has a long track record of being very successful in applying for and receiving both state and federal grants to help us with road projects, specifically road improvements, especially when we create some pedestrian connections and pedestrian facilities. Are any of these proposed changes reducing the impact of what we have traditionally done in the past? Are they going to negatively affect our ability to obtain those state and federal grants in the future?
Well, I can speak to TDOT. Well, when we have TDOT money or federal money for Union Road. They were the ones that we were able to push for design exceptions, because it was supposed to be 12-foot lanes, 40-mile-per-hour design speed, bike lanes, 4-foot bike lanes, 3-foot grass strip, and 5-foot sidewalks on both sides. That's what Union Road was supposed to be. And we got 80-20 split. And they had adopted the multimodal standards in 2015, which is what gave me the ability to fight to reduce the standards so that we could kind of preserve a little bit more of the Union Road corridor. That was, I don't think if we didn't have that 80-20 split with TDOT, we would have gotten those changes because they weren't necessary. That was pretty new. That idea was very new. Those were very new standards, the multimodal standards. So we were kind of like their practice case. No one ever saw what Union Road was supposed to be, because in 2013, I stepped up to that podium when it was there and asked them to reprioritize from Union Road to Everett Road. And in doing so, saved Union Road from being Everett Road. Union Road, you know what it looks like. You reduce the design speed from 40 to 30 miles per hour, and all of a sudden, you're allowed to have a little bit more leeway in your, the higher the design speed, the flatter and straighter the road needs to be. And that's the problem with McPhee and Old Stage and Everett. And I think that they're looking for abilities to build these slower roads with thoughtful design. I think that's why Farragut tends to get the funding that we do get. We're getting Virtue Road design speed for the other one is now 35 miles per hour as opposed to 40. I know the initial part was they reduced from 40 to 35, which is helpful. So there's already flexibility in the standards, and we're getting them from the state. TDOT's approving them. So I don't think that we would be affected by this.
Thank you. That's what I was hoping to hear.
Okay, I'll weigh in on that as well. I do sit on the TPO board. We're the one that approves the funding for a lot of these projects. And one of the things that Darrell's group, which is a technical board, tries to do is look at road projects that are more multimodal. That is the trend of the future, and you're going to see what we're trying to do here as being what you will see in the future. The old style roads are something that the costing of them, when you say it's an 80-20 and you've got all that extra asphalt and all those extra walking trails and sidewalks and grass strips and street trees, all of a sudden you're talking about a very, very expensive project compared to one that can be a lot cheaper and one that makes more sense. So.
Do we have any other discussion? Everybody else is good? All right, let's move on to 4G. Discussion and public hearing on an amendment to the Farragut Municipal Code, Chapter 109, signs to clarify when signs may be removed by property owners, Town of Farragut applicant.
Wait a minute.
Oh, yeah.
Did you already introduce this? Yes. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, this ordinance 25-09, was, the language is really kind of initiated by Alderman White. He wanted to help clarify when signs could be removed by property owners. And initially, the language was drafted by the town attorney. He sent it to me, and Bart, and we had some adjustments to it, and he agreed that those were good changes. The main thing that this does is it really clarifies what's considered to be the public right-of-way in terms of enforcing sign removal, you know. And that's something that I think we probably have needed for a while because the right-of-way varies throughout town. And especially on these major roads, you know, unless the property's been developed or subdivided in recent years, I mean, we have no idea what the right-of-way is. And we've kind of looked at the overhead utility lines and the poles and said, well, that's probably the right-of-way. But this helps establish the standard, and it's basically 12 feet from the back of curb or the edge of the street. If there's no curbing in place, that's considered to be the public right-of-way for purposes of sign removal. So if a sign's in that space, then it's subject to being removed if it doesn't have approval. So that's the big thing that this does, that this particular ordinance does. All the other things are kind of related to that. Does anybody have any questions specifically about this ordinance? The staff is recommending approval of Resolution PC-25-03, which would recommend approval of Ordinance 25-09.
Mark, do we have any public input for this?
No,
All right.
we do not.
Then we'll go on to discussion.
I have a question. Actually, the 12 feet was actually my question. So we have rights-of-way defined, right, at some places by other documents?
Well, I mean, you've got the required right-of-way in our subdivision regulations. But again, that depends on whether something's ever been subdivided. So you know, we don't know.
So do we end up having two definitions for right-of-way, with this one and whatever might be defined somewhere
No,
else?
I think as it's applied to this application, signage, that's the right-of-way, no matter what.
Okay.
That way it's clear, it's consistent, everybody knows what the standard is, it's been adopted, it's in writing, you know, and so normally 12 feet is the right-of-way edge on a local street that's internal to a subdivision. So that's really where we got that language, was 12 feet is the typical distance that you have on local streets. So we're applying that standard more broadly to these arterial and collector streets so that everything's consistent.
That's the only question I had.
Yeah, I attended one of the BRRB meetings, and this was discussed. Alderman White brought that up. It's been discussed. One of the things that I think anybody that's ran for public office in this town, and they have signs, and they talk to the property owner to make sure that it's okay to put the sign on their property. And what you want to do there is make sure, and this is what we all used, is that 12-foot rule is what we've all used, knowing that it could be the telephone poles, you never know on them. That's not a good indicator. It's just one everybody's used. But a lot of times that's the 12-foot rule on, you know, you make sure that you're within that rule, then your sign stays. You don't make sure you're there, then your sign usually goes away.
I apologize, I never got a motion on this, so I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Do I have any more discussion? In that case, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Means it goes to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for final approval, correct?
Yes, it will be going to the board.
All right, next item on the agenda is discussion and public hearing on approval of the Knox County, City of Knoxville, and Town of Farragut multi-jurisdictional local hazard mitigation plan, Town of Farragut applicant. I believe Bart is handling this one.
Yep, I'm here for that, that plan, and it's a potential approval by this board and then forwarding it on to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. This is a plan update for the 2018 plan, which was an update for the one before that. it's a required plan by FEMA if local governments want to be eligible for hazard mitigation grants. So there's a process that they have to go through, a defined set of criteria that need to be in a hazard mitigation plan. And again, then this is an update of the 2018 plan. The purpose of the plan is to reduce or eliminate long-term risk to people and property from natural hazards. The way you do that is you put in place mitigation strategies and then potentially, fund those type of projects or those type of outreach efforts to deal with mitigating the effects of natural hazards. So flooding, windstorms, that sort of thing. The plan does provide some really good and valuable information on natural hazards that do affect this area, and it ranks them in terms of severity, and then it provides those mitigation strategies. It was put together through a formal planning process where stakeholders from all the jurisdictions, along with some of the utility providers and other entities that are also impacted by natural hazards and windstorms, floodings, blizzards, and that sort of thing. So the plan, as I said, is required for grants. It's already been approved by FEMA. The way the process works is the plan is put together, it's submitted to the state of Tennessee and the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency. They review it, then they forward it on to FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They look at it, make sure that it meets all the minimum requirements to be in a FEMA-approved hazard mitigation plan. Then they approve it pending local adoption. So it has to come back to the local governments. Once one of the 3 local governments adopts it, it's an official plan, but then each individual government also has to adopt it to be eligible for the mitigation grants. So if the town of Farragut wants, to have eligibility for that type of grants, it will have to adopt this plan update.
I need a motion.
Motion.
Who moved? John moved and
Motion,
Jeff.
motion
and
to
Jeff,
approve
you
the hazard
second?
mitigation plan.
It's a resolution.
Yeah, what we did is we prepared a resolution for the planning commission to adopt it and then to recommend it on to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, which will also have to adopt it by resolution. And a copy of that resolution is in your packet as well.
Okay. So I got a motion and a second from Jeff. Any public input?
No, we do not.
Any discussion?
None.
In that case, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Bart. All right, next thing on the agenda is the appointment of tree board member.
Yeah, this was postponed last month, and because we had several people out. We still have some out this time, so I guess it's just a factor of summertime. But as I mentioned last month, the tree board is required because we're a tree city. It's provided for in our public tree care ordinance. And one of the requirements for tree board membership is that one of the representatives has to be either from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen or the Planning Commission. Most of the tree board are staff members that deal with public properties because the tree board really administers tree installation and tree care mostly on public properties. The private properties are kind of regulated by our tree protection ordinance and our landscaping requirements. So that's a little separate. The committee usually meets once per quarter. We'll probably have a meeting actually pretty soon once we know who the appointee would be from the Planning Commission. Scott Russ was our representative, and of course with him being off the Planning Commission now, we're asking that the Planning Commission consider appointing a replacement member.
Okay, I will go ahead and nominate Louise Pavlin.
Second. Any public input?
No.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, we're moving on to discussion items. Discussion item number 5A, discussion on amendments to the Farragut Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, zoning, Chapter 4, Section 6, customary home occupations, Town of Farragut applicant. This is for discussion purposes only, and Bart is heading this up as well.
Okay, again, been working on some potential amendments to the town zoning ordinance, dealing with customary home occupations. The discussion on this topic first began in, almost a year ago in October of 2024. At that time, the Planning Commission discussed it and thought it would be a good idea to, to work on some potential amendments and also involve a small citizen steering committee, to be part of that effort. So we've been working on that since then. We were back before the Planning Commission in April, got some input from y'all on at that time, went back to work with the committee, made some additional changes. One of them is we tried to compress it. I think that was a suggestion of Commissioner Green. So we went from a type 1 type home occupation, which would not require a permit. It would have standards attached to it, but it would not require a permit. And then type 2 would require a permit and allow more intensive home occupations and commercial activity. And then we had a number of other kind of subcategories, and some of the members of the Planning Commission felt that was a little confusing or got sort of repetitive in the code. So it was suggested that we try to go back and reorganize and compress it a little bit. So we've done that. I want to get your input on what we did in terms of trying to reorganize. We also tried to clarify some of the uses that are allowed in type 2. I broke that out as bullet points. I think it's easier to read that way and to see the full range of uses that would be allowed in the type 2. I'd like to get some input on that, make sure that the Planning Commission is comfortable with that. And then there's still the issue of vehicles for type 2, which are larger type vehicles, and also added in trailers, because in some cases, a home occupation might want to have a pull-behind trailer. So that was something that we added. The committee also added, and I didn't have this in the write-up, but they thought it might be a good idea to require that the home occupation permits be reviewed every 2 years or renewed. There wouldn't be a fee in their recommendation, but at least something to where they have to come back around. That's something we may need to align better with the town's business licensing, so that we're not kind of, cross purposes with that. So that may need to change a little bit. But I did want to come back and get some additional input from you on several of the changes we made. And in the write-up, I had those sort of broken out as sort of the general approach that we took in terms of combining it, if you think it's better this way, if it makes more sense this way. And then also the range of uses that are being provided for, particularly in the type 2, which is over on the third page of the draft regulations, or it's not in ordinance form, but this is what the regulations will be. We did break those out a little bit, also added in some small-scale minor assembly, because we've had people to request that type of thing. Small engine repair, we've had those in the past. Simple auto repair, if someone's fixing a car in their garage or that type of thing. We added those in. Don't know how you feel about that. Don't know how the Board of Mayor and Aldermen will feel about that, but, we're kind of throwing everything in and, with the thought that if either the Planning Commission or the Board of Mayor and Aldermen feel that some of it needs to be pulled out, it can be pulled out. And then, of course, the larger, more mobile type uses, which we can talk some, because those are the ones that generate the need for larger vehicles. So I'm open for input from y'all. At some point, we'll have to put this in ordinance form. It'll have to come to this board, same as any other zoning amendment. You'll have to review it. You'll have to make a recommendation onto the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and then the Board of Mayor and Aldermen will have to review it, have a public hearing on it, and pass it by ordinance with 2 readings. So there's a few more steps to go before this gets codified, but I'd like to get some additional input from y'all before we, put it in ordinance form and bring it back for actual action.
Mark, do we have any public input on this?
I do have one, he was actually one of the committee members, Brian Walker.
Okay.
For the vehicles,
Can Brian come up and do his public input, and then we'll talk some more? I'm sorry. I thought you were done. I apologize, Bart.
All right, thank you, guys. Yeah, Brian Walker, 408 East Kingsgate. I was on the committee, went to every meeting on there, and pretty much a majority of everything we agreed upon. It was no big deal. We all got together. When it came to the vehicles, which you're seeing on the screen now, we came up with the whole thing, and I hate to fall back on the word fairness, but understand what we're doing with this, okay? So the overall understanding, this is a complaint-driven ordinance. So if a neighbor has a problem, the neighbor will complain to, and then we, the town of Farragut, has to investigate. This is not the point where a town employee is gonna be driving around the city looking for stuff and everything else. So we're coming back on which neighbors do you wanna live next to? Are they gonna complain? If you live in a great neighborhood, no one cares, then you can do whatever you want to. But if you live in a neighborhood where one person complains, your whole livelihood could be shut down. Now, what I also understand too is there's a big difference between commercial and private vehicles. So any commercial or any private person, you can paint it neon green, put LED lights all around it and everything else. But the moment you slap a logo on there or an ice cream cone or something else, now it's complaint driven. So the fairness of there is like, hey, you can do whatever you want to if you're a personal citizen with your personal vehicle, but you can't do it with a commercial truck because you have a name on it. So that was one other thing. And then talking to a bunch of people throughout the town, and they have not food trucks, but just they bring their vehicle home from their work because that's their vehicle that they drive. It's going to hurt a lot of people overall because not only inconvenience them to have to basically get to and from their house, from their job site, or from their business, but they're also going to lose money because now they have to park that vehicle somewhere else, and to find land where you can just park a vehicle is going to be a lot more difficult to have money going forward. So the overall thing, and I'll speak for myself, not for the committee itself, but the overall thing, it should be an HOA issue, okay, not a town issue. It shouldn't be a town ordinance. If the HOA has a problem with it, then have them deal with it. I don't think the town needs to be a police for this whole thing if that's the issue on that one. So basically, I'm personally asking to have the ordinance for the vehicles taken out of the section for this new ordinance. Thank you.
Is that all we have for public input? Thank you, Brian.
Yeah. Yes, that is.
All right, open it up for discussion.
Bart, I remember one of the scenarios that we discussed had to do with a generator. And I don't see any language that addresses sound or a generator in the draft. And it may be that we just don't go there. I mean, we've had sound complaints come up over the years, and really the only body that has any kind of teeth is Knox County when it comes to private residences. And so do you have any thoughts, or does the committee have any thoughts about how to deal with that particular issue? And maybe it's so isolated where it was just one instance where somebody ran a generator. It seems like they would turn it on at 6 a.m. to start doing something, and then finally the truck would leave at 8 a.m. to go to its destination. So I'd like just to open that up and see if you could opine on that for a moment or two.
Well, we don't have a way to measure decibels or a noise ordinance in that respect. But we currently have some language on that, and I did mean to attach the current language. I've got copies here if anyone wants to see it. You can kind of pass these down. That's the town's current ordinance. I had meant to attach that in the packet, and I didn't. But in the draft language, I sort of mirror what's already in there, and under the general requirements, it applies to all home occupations, regardless type 1 or type 2. Item 9 basically covers, no equipment process or, can create noise, vibration, glare, fumes, et cetera, that's detectable to normal senses off the lot. So if you can hear it off the lot, then it would be a violation. So that's how we dealt with that. One thing I did want to clarify that, that Brian brought up is, I do propose having adding 2 definitions to the zoning ordinance as well. And one would be home-based worker. So if you're not operating your business from home, if you work for somebody else, and you do occasionally bring a vehicle home, you wouldn't be covered by that, by these regulations. These regulations would only apply for a customary home occupation if your business is sort of domiciled there at your house. If that's your business address and that's where you're operating out of, as opposed to someone that, might occasionally bring their work vehicle home. So, so that would not apply. The town does not have currently, restrictions for parking those type of vehicles. Some local governments do, but that's not something that we currently have. When I was looking through how other people dealt with how other jurisdictions dealt with home occupations, I had to be careful to think about, what else might they have on the books? Because, in some cases, they didn't address vehicles, but it's because they addressed vehicles elsewhere in their municipal code, and they just flat out didn't allow larger trucks. So they didn't have to deal with it in their home occupation provisions. We don't have that, and so it's something that if we're gonna allow people to operate businesses out of their homes or, on their property, they could conceivably bring very large vehicles on their site, and, where does the town want to draw the line on that? I had one gentleman call and was looking at property in Thornton Heights and wanted to run his business out of there, and he wanted to have basically 3 full-size Snap-on tool trucks there and have his workers come and pick them up every morning and go out on their runs. So, if you don't have some standard, people will do things like that. So that, that's why we did develop some standards on the size of vehicles. I know that, again, what Brian brought up is, individuals right now, they could have a comparably sized vehicle. They could have an RV that's as big as, or bigger than some of the vehicles we're talking about here. But it goes back to the concept from a zoning standpoint of a customary home occupation. And if someone's moving into a residential area, what might they customarily expect to see in their neighborhood versus what, are they, not typically going to see in their neighborhood. And so that's how we were trying to approach, the development of this is, yes, people want to be able to operate their businesses from, from home, but at the same time, their neighbors bought into a residential area expecting an area with residential character. And at what point does the activities of one party start to impact on the expectations of the other? Because in this case, you have, 2 neighbors, to simplify it, they both bought residential property. They both bought property in a residential neighborhood. Now, one of them all of a sudden wants to run a business. And so at what point does that, does the impact of that business start to potentially take away from the residential character that the other party bought in expecting? Got some pictures here. These slides were in the first presentation that that you saw back in April. Just, this is an example of what we mean by a cargo van or a utility van. They range in length and size. The next one is, some people call them step vans, walk-in vans, multi-stop truck. It's basically the FedEx and UPS size trucks that you see in your neighborhoods. they're oftentimes converted into the food trucks. The next one is just for a picture for scale. Mark Shipley, here in the parking lot, we were doing this vehicle was being inspected by our fire marshal for operations in the town. That is, we measured it, and it had a large bumper extension. That was about 27.5 feet. So essentially, that's the size vehicle that we currently, in the regulations model. I mean, that's a big vehicle. We did make the change that was suggested at the last planning commission meeting that, in April when you reviewed this, to require these to be parked behind the front plane of the home, similar to what we require now for RVs. That's good from the street perspective. You know, when you're driving down the street, it's gonna be back behind the home, but that puts it right along the neighbor's property line, potentially. So, again, you know, where's that trade-off between, you know, the residential character that the neighbors might be expecting and the property owner that wants to run their business out of their home? And those, you know, that's a balancing act that the town is gonna have to think through and decide, you know, where that dividing line is. Next slide, Mark, is trailers were not addressed originally, but we got thinking that, you know, people, rather than having a large truck, might want to have a trailer. It might be a lawn service, might be something enclosed. It could be a lawn service in an enclosed, or it could be an open trailer. And the next slide is, that's a food truck trailer that was, again, getting inspected just last week or the week before here at Town Hall, so I ran out and took a picture of it. That's a 14-foot box. So the main box part, not those two little extensions off the front of it, but just the main box, that's a 14-foot trailer. So vehicles have been one of the issues with, you know, both at the committee level and something that we think through at the staff level as to, you know, what the impact of these regulations might be on the neighborhoods. Some jurisdictions will, in fact, the jurisdiction that I copied the idea of the type 1 and type 2, you know, for their type 2 where they allowed more intensive uses, even more intensive than, you know, what's allowed here in larger vehicles, they put a 2-acre minimum on it so that, you know, they could be further away from, you know, from adjoining neighbors. If we put a 2-acre minimum in the town of Farragut, that would eliminate, you know, the vast majority of properties in the town to, you know, be able to, you know, do this type of activity. So that didn't really seem reasonable, you know, to, you know, tell people they could do something and then from a practical standpoint, they can't. So, in any case, any thoughts or input that y'all have on where we are with the regulations now? Any additional tweaks that, you know, you think might be needed before we bring it back in ordinance
I think
form?
Mayor Williams has some.
Sure.
Well, I'll start off with, Brian brought up a good point. HOAs typically have something in their restrictions concerning these kind of things. But we do have, maybe 4, 5 subdivisions that do not have HOAs. And so a whole lot of times, these properties are rental properties. And they are renting there, they're parking there, they're operating out of there. But one of the important things is that we do require that if you're going to put one beside your house and you're going to park to where it's behind the frontage of the house, there has to be a concrete pad there.
Yeah, that's written in here that it would have to be on an approved surface. It wouldn't, you know, it could be concrete, it could be asphalt, it
Yeah.
could be pavers, something like that, but it would have to not just be out in the grass or the dirt. Yep.
I mean, even with HOAs, you're going to have that come up. You know, we have in Sherwood, we had a Snap-on truck, we had a Airstream trailer. I've got probably 3 motorhomes on Sugarwood Drive, but they park back behind the front of the house. So you're gonna have those. And occasionally you'll have boats, sometimes yard trailers. Most of the time, they're, again, on the back side, or at least away from the front. I think the problem really is when you get into the commercial big FedEx-style units, most of the time, that's just a little bit over the top, regardless of where it's at, whether it's in a subdivision that has a HOA or whether it's in a subdivision that don't have an HOA. It's a billboard, basically, for whatever. Good examples, what you got up there now, and then that other thing, that 27.5-foot one is that's just a little bit over the top. But most of the time, I think your people that have pickup trucks and company cars that have the name of that company on the side of it, if you went through all the subdivisions and counted those, you would probably be very, very surprised how many of them there are. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable.
We've been seeing a lot of home occupation permits because the town, has done a lot of outreach for its business licensing provisions. And so a lot of people are applying for those. And when you check the address, it's in a residential area. Now most of them would be type 1 or very low level type 2 under this regime. They're people that are doing, computer work from home. Their business is there, the address of their business is there, but, they're just sitting in their room that they've converted into an office and doing computer work. They're consultants, they're business consultants, they're sales representatives where they're doing everything online and, they're just, kind of brokering deals, and that sort of thing. Some slightly different ones. We've had a couple people that are doing, small scale, things like roasting coffee, things like that they're then selling at a farmer's market, really small amounts and that sort of thing. So, we don't have a lot of the larger ones, but there are a couple, and really what drove this initial discussion is there was a large food truck that.
I think for me, that's the point. Like, I'm very sympathetic to what Brian said. I think trying to regulate vehicles, certainly take-home vehicles, shouldn't be part of this. I think it's the giant step vans is really the only vehicles we need to be considering worrying about and making sure that, we have got something in place for those at the places that don't have an HOA.
That size step van, and again, it was, we were looking for different ways to sort of quantify it. And there was talk about like gross vehicle weight and stuff, but, we have no capacity to check on that kind of stuff and constantly looking that up. And doing a little research, like, most of those vehicles, they define it like, if you Google step van size, they're defining the box, the actual storage area in the vehicle. And a 16-foot box, typically when you add on the cab and the engine and everything with it, works out to be like 26, 27 foot. So that was that class vehicle, which is very common for food trucks. Some smaller food trucks sometimes are in 14-foot box, which would be about 24 feet of length, so a little bit less. But again, a lot of this was driven by the potential to allow for people to have larger food trucks on site, and
I don't know that I feel like they shouldn't be there. It's more of if a neighbor's complaining and they're running a generator. Again, we're kind of back to square one with this, and it's sticking out too far and it's hideous to look at. That's not cool. So,
well, we can't necessarily, regulating what they say on them is problematic. So it's
I meant more like not doing that, but making sure it's out of the way and hidden. Something like that.
And generators is another problem because if it's a food truck where they've got hamburger meat or whatever stored on there, and they've got that generator running, all night long, and your house is, there's a 5-foot or 10-foot or 15-foot between the houses, then that's going to be an issue, and you're going to have a complaint.
Well, the way this, the way this is written right now, if you can stand on the neighbor's property and hear it, they're in violation.
Everybody else,
Yeah, have you gotten enough direction from,
We can send it on this way and see the court may all things, so that with the size vehicles, it does allow that vehicle that, Mark was standing in front of. That vehicle's allowed underneath it.
I'm looking at that, and it looks to me like the size, it could be the size of a large motorhome that we would allow. So that's my struggle is, I get that, and I get living next door to it, and I really, I'm kind of looking at this as maybe we need to be a little bit more, not lax, but permitting. And if it is an issue that comes up quite a bit, then we go and be a little bit more restrictive. But I'm struggling with that.
I'm kind of in the same boat with Louise. I think we've spent a lot of time on this, and heaven knows that you've spent a lot of time and staff spent a lot of time on this, researching what other municipalities do. Normally, I wouldn't want to try to encourage a ratification of an ordinance using this methodology, but my thought is here, I think you've got some good bones to this. I would encourage the board of mayor and aldermen to get it adopted. And then if all of a sudden we realize, okay, we overlooked something, then let's revisit it. Because I'm not sure, we're not gonna address every situation, and we're not gonna make everybody 100% happy. But I think what you've done here with some of the limitations on the trucks and the trailers, I think are important to be included. I think it is in the right direction. Again, if we miss something, or all of a sudden we're having a whole bunch of violations, which is this is not about trying to find violations. What we're trying to do is trying to come up with something that is, and I think Brian used the term fair, trying to find something that's fair for both folks that bought those residential homes, the folks that want to run their business, and then the folks that bought their house next door that bought it based upon the residential character. And so my thought is, let's move forward with it, and if we need to revisit, then we'll tackle it in the future.
Do you have enough direction, Bart, then? Sounds great. Thank you. All right, Mark, do we have any approval of utilities beyond the
No.
ones we already have?
No, we don't.
Citizens Forum?
No.
All right.
motion to dismiss.
We're out.